What's up, everybody? In this video we're going to go from this boring patch of uneven grass to this awesome shed base and floor, perfect for puppies. Stick around and find out.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So this is where I want to build my workshop. Currently I'm in the basement, but I'm going to move it out to the garage. Need a little more room. So we need a place to put all this crap, and that's where the shed comes in. So before I start evening things out, I really want to get all this grass out of here.
Now watch me whip, kill it. Now watch me nay nay. Okay. Now watch me whip, whip. Watch me nay nay. Why me do?
Enough horsing around, let's get to it. Looks like I stopped to think about snacks. I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of shake all the dirt out of this grass. I didn't have a ton of room to dump all this grass and all this waste, so I thought the less I piled up the better, but it was kind of just a waste of time. I wasn't really able to shave anything off of it. This is Pepper. She's our little long-haired girl. She's a miniature dachshund, and she likes to yell at me for not working hard enough. But she's cute, so I'll put up with it. The camera does a good job of flattening things out. It's hard to tell really how much dirt needs to be moved around here, but it's a good bit. It's much higher on the right side than it is on that front left side. In this image, you can kind of see that. It's a lot of work. A lot of dirt has to move around. Thankfully, I was able to borrow this tractor from one of my neighbors. You could rent one of these for a couple of hours for around $250, $300. I'm sure it depends on where you live, but it was definitely worth it. I would have been digging for a long time and would have broken my back in the process. So having this tractor was such a huge help. In like 20-30 minutes, I leveled this whole thing out. And I'm sure there's a lot of machine operators out there cringing right now because I really don't know the technique of how to flatten out and level a surface, but this did good enough. My girlfriend's dad and brother came along to help. They're the best. There were big slabs of slate buried here from the previous homeowner. I'm not sure why. When I bought the house, there were 2 big tree stumps back here. I paid a guy to come grind them down with a stump grinder. I was worried that I would run into some remnants while trying to level the surface, but thankfully it wasn't an issue at all, and we were able to just kind of like rake everything nice and level. I'm using these cut-offs of wood to kind of indicate where my base is going to be so that we can get everything relatively level where it needs to be. The base is going to be 14 by 10, while the shed is going to be 12 by 8.
Ooh, a piece of candy.
I busted out the rotary laser to get everything level. It was just a lot easier than using an actual level. I know most of you won't have a laser like this, but you could just use a level and get it as level as you can. During this process, we're really just trying to roughly level everything out so that I can run it over with the tractor and pack it all down again. Now it's time to mark out my half laps on these 4x4s. You can see on the fourth one up, there's a huge gouge on the end of it. That's the snipe from their industrial planers. I'm really just taking my time to mark halfway into each of these 4x4s. Probably a good idea to take the battery out of the saw when setting the depth. And anytime I can, I use my square as a fence for my circular saw. Just keeps everything nice and square. I also like to batch everything out whenever I can. Mark everything, then cut everything with the circular saw, then cut everything with the Sawzall. Just saves time that way. There's little grooves in your speed square. I think they're every 1/4 inch. So that makes it easy to mark 1 3/4, slide it across, nice and square and straight. I wasn't really sure if the Sawzall was the right move for this, so I just kind of went slow and took my time. Tried to keep on that line. I tried to follow along the top and make sure I was cutting down nice and square, and then I would cut down a bit. And I'd really just rock the blade back and forth, keeping right against that line. And it worked out really well. It was actually a really clean cut, and I was pretty surprised for a Sawzall. I didn't want to cut too far into the bottom because I couldn't see, so I flipped everything over, and you can see I just barely nicked it. So now that I can see where my blade is going, I can make sure I'm following that line once again. And at this point, the blade is very well supported. Everything's going to keep straight. And just kind of went through the end. The only thing to be mindful of now is not overcutting. So I just kind of wiggled my way to that back line. Keeping an eye on the top, looking at the bottom. And there she goes. All of my notches have one side going over and the opposite side going under. If you do this with all your pieces, everything will lock together properly. I put my 4x4s, I think it was 3 or 4 feet off the fence, probably 3 feet. I know my local code says your shed needs to be 2 feet off the fence or property line, so I went 3 feet just so I'd be able to walk back there and not be too tight, just to be sure. The most important part of this layout is that the shed base is parallel to the garage that's off screen. So I'm butting my tape up against the garage, and I really want to make sure this 4x4 is nice and parallel with the garage. This maneuver looks like it's really good for my back. Don't do that. Here I'm measuring for square, so when 2 opposing corner-to-corner measurements are the same, then you're square. Again, I'm using the rotary laser to figure out how level or out of level I am. You don't need to do this. You can use a regular level. It's just this was a lot faster for me. I just prop my 4x4s up with a little cutoff piece and just kind of shove some dirt under there to shim it up a bit. I did that all around all four sides until I was completely level. I also kind of shored up the outside edges with a little bit of dirt, just for stability, keep everything where it needs to be. I waited till nighttime to do this, because during the day you just can't see that laser line at all. And I was really surprised to see how well you could see it on camera. That must have been the dinner bell, because I stormed off and didn't look back. I locked all these seams together with a weather-coated screw. It's very important not to use just a plain drywall screw or something, because it will rust and eventually break. So before I start pouring rocks, I just want to shore up these inside edges just a little bit. Altogether, we used 1.5 yards of 3/4 inch rough or coarse bluestone. Each trip, we took a 1/2 yard and we made 3 trips out of it. You can see in the back we use a tarp. That's to keep the rocks from falling in between the bed and the lift gate. So on our last trip here, we actually forgot the tarp, and it was a nightmare picking all those rocks out of that little crack. Time to set some blocks. These are 4-inch concrete blocks. And leveling my blocks was pretty easy because we took a lot of care in leveling the base itself. So everything at this point was pretty level. I had to make some minor changes, but this part went really quickly. You really don't need a miter saw for any of this. You can use a circular saw with a square like I did earlier. Just a miter saw makes it a lot easier. You also don't need to pre-drill like I do. Pre-drilling just helps keep that screw straight. I find that sometimes if you don't pre-drill, it can like kind of pull in one direction or another. A little bit of flashbacks there. It didn't really help much trying to square everything up there. I waited till all the joists got in when it was much heavier. It was a little more effective in trying to get things square, because anytime I tried to move it, it would just kind of bounce back. Here I'm measuring everything 16 inches on center. Clamping this piece on the bottom here, give me a little lip to sit on so I could go to the other end and screw it off. This is what hammers were made for. I put in one screw, squared up my joist, and then locked in that second screw. I wanted to take a moment here to thank you guys for getting this far. If the video is helpful or if you find it entertaining, throw me a like, it'll really help me out. I'm a new content creator, so everything helps. I'll be regularly uploading DIY videos for home improvements and woodworking, and subscribe to my page for more content. Thanks a lot. You can see at the bottom of the screen there, my first and last joists are longer. They go to the end of that rim joist. That's so when the second rim joist goes on, I can screw into the end of the first joist. I hope that wasn't too confusing, but there it is. I'm screwing into the end of that first joist, and it really just helps me get more screws in it and lock everything together. You don't have to do it this way, but I wanted to do it this way. All of these joist hangers have a little tab on them. And when you hammer that tab in, it's like a little nail, just helps set everything in place. And then you can go and put in your nails or your screws. Anytime you can batch things together, the faster it goes. So I went through and I hammered all those tabs in on all of the joists, and then I came back and put screws in on all the joists. Anywhere I couldn't put a joist hanger, I just kind of put 4 screws, toenailed them in, and that should be good enough. Here, I'll show you guys how I pick up a sheet of plywood. Instead of bending over to get it, I like to tip it forward, grab it in the middle, tilt it back, and rest it on my shoulder. used the plywood to kind of square up my floor here. The plywood's not perfectly square, but it's close enough. I'm marking where those joists are, 16 on center, and then I'm going to snap them with my chalk line, just so my screws all go in nice and I don't miss any. I used to work with a guy, he would always say the turtle always wins a race. Meaning if you take your time, mark everything out properly, take all the proper steps and don't skip steps, in the end it's going to come out more quickly and you'll be more productive. You can see the plywood's not aligning perfectly to the edge of my rim joist, which means it's a little out of square. So I just kind of push my floor around until it lines up with the plywood, and then we're good to screw everything off. And just like that, we have a floor for a shed. This is just part one of a multi-video series of how to build a shed. Thanks for sticking around. Like this video and subscribe to my channel for more content. I hope you're all as excited as she is, and I'll see you all in part two. Thanks again.